I don't regret becoming a teacher. I really don't. But in retrospect, if I had to do it again, I'd never do it. I'd never become a teacher. And I thought I'd put this video out there and kind of explain why. Maybe you're a retired teacher or retiring and you can relate. Or maybe you're considering the career and might give you time to pause and think about it. Anyway, this is kind of my story. Don't get me wrong, I had wonderful times, wonderful moments teaching. I have such great memories of students that I had that I still remember their faces and their times and their smiles and their tears, and I've got wonderful memories as far as that goes. Many years they'd come back to me afterwards, "Mr. V, you remember me?" And of course I wouldn't. You know, I mean, the students would grow so quickly over a year, and you know, you'd have 150 different students every year, and it'd take you a few months to learn all their names. Before you know it, the year'd be over. They would move on, and then they'd come back a year later, and they've grown incredibly, and you've now gotten 150 new students that you're trying to remember their names. So it was always funny to try and, well, yeah, I remember you, but I forget the name. What was it? More times I could remember what class they were from. And then certain specific students, they were wonderful. They're just wonderful in class and a pleasure to teach. The ones that wanted to learn and were, you know, brought up in a solid background, a solid family unit. I mean, you could tell those right away. They were wonderful to teach. Every year you'd have some problems, and depending on what school you were teaching, depending on how many problems you had, some students that were just completely belligerent that you had to deal with. And you had to find a way to reach that child, you know, and understand that what they had gone through and why they were what they were at that particular time. Anyway, in looking back, what got me into teaching in the first place, I was a late bloomer because I spent the first half of my life, at the time, as a professional musician. I was a professional touring guitarist, singer, recording artist. And then as I got older, I wanted to, you know, get into a regular type job that, you know, I wasn't partying all night. And so I moved to Florida from California and got into the business field, grew in through middle management in the business field, various corporations. And then after, I don't know, 15 years of doing that, I realized that middle management was in such jeopardy as far as longevity of employment. And I needed something to where I didn't have to worry about being laid off if I was 60 years old and trying to start over and finding a job. And I happen to love kids. So I went back to school, got a degree in teaching, English specifically. I was an English teacher. And while I was going to school, I got a job as a substitute teacher just to acclimate into the environment, make sure it was what I wanted to do. That's a subject for an entirely different video. The time I spent as a substitute teacher a few years while I was in school, that was quite a challenge. I mean, if you could survive being a substitute, you can survive being a teacher. But like I said, that's a whole different subject. But the school that I was doing my substitute teaching at, primarily upper middle class neighborhood, South Florida, and lovely teachers, lovely principals, assistant principals, and they hired me as soon as I got my degree. They said, "We want you as a full-time teacher." So I got on board there as a full-time teacher, South Florida, and was having a wonderful time, actually, and again, had some wonderful students that I very much adored. Great memories. And to be frank, I love the time off. You know, summer's off to, get your act together, recuperate from the year, and all the holidays off. The perks were really nice. But then there was a downturn. I think it was probably, around the time 2008, when we were having the housing crisis and the enrollment in schools were dropping because families weren't moving. Anyway, this particular school had no turnover whatsoever. Teachers wouldn't leave there. So even after 6 years, I was low man on the totem pole. Now, when enrollment dropped, I ended up being surplused, which on one hand, that's good, because with this particular county, if you had seniority in the county, if you were surplused, you had to change schools, but you were guaranteed a job in the county. But I lost out at that school, and I was placed in a pretty rough inner city high school. I didn't mention I was teaching 8th grade at the time for those 6 years, and I was surplus and transferred into an inner city 9th grade high school appointment. And that was everything that you see in the movies, that depicts in the movies. It was a tough school, absolute tough. From day one, it was tough. Administration, they ran it like drill sergeants. I think they had to, because the clientele were really tough. I mean, a lot of these poor kids, their families were, the father, if there was a father in the home, they might have been in prison. One parent or of the others would be in prison. They may be living with their aunt. Some really sad stories there. But I worked at that school for 5 years, and I survived it. But again, it was tough. It was very tough emotionally. It was tough on me physically. Although we weren't supposed to, I broke up fights in the classroom. Ended up bloodied on one day because the policy to stand back and call for help and don't break up a fight. But it wasn't my nature to stand back and let kids beat each other up. So, like a fool, I jumped in the middle of it. Anyway, I finally transferred out and got back into teaching the 7th and 8th grade again in middle school. And again, my interaction with students was wonderful for many years. And every year there were students that I absolutely loved. And I loved the time and the teachers, the camaraderie. But it took a toll on my health. One of the problems with teaching is politics got involved with the state testing, what was then the FCAT testing. Then they changed it. But it became your whole report card was how your students did on the FCAT teaching or the state teaching. So that's where all the concentration was, and all your concentration was teaching your kids to pass that test and to do well. If they didn't do well on the test, that reflected on you, and then they'd spend all kinds of time coming and checking you out, making sure you're doing things right. So the politics grew to be something that made it not enjoyable. A lot of the decisions were made from higher up, at the time the feds, instilling policies that didn't work well inside the classroom because they weren't inside a classroom. Policies written by people that didn't have much of an idea what it was like inside the classroom. So it takes a toll on your health, your stress level. I ended up in this time too to increase the income of going back to school again, and I got my master's degree. So that increased my income about $12,000 a year. Probably not worth it what I paid for it, but I did it anyway. I enjoyed the learning environment in school after being out of it for so long. But also as an English teacher, one thing we had to focus a lot of our attention on was writing skills, teaching our kids how to write, and again, how to do well on a written test, on the state test, how to score those. So a lot of my time was spent taking stacks of essays home over days, and reading and scoring and reading and scoring, every night. That's the thing about a teacher too. You spend so much time outside of the classroom working that they don't even talk about. An English teacher is going to spend hours at home reading over papers and studying them. I actually got certification in math as well, so I could teach math. But when the opportunities came around to teach math to change, the opportunity that was given me was a 9th grade math position in an inner city school. And I didn't have the confidence level to teach 9th grade. I figured, okay, you know what, I'll teach 6th or 7th grade, get my foot in the door. So I turned down that position and stayed in English. But I ended up retiring after 15 years of doing it. My health was starting to diminish because of the stress levels. That's the thing that they don't talk about, the stress, between the stress of the politics, the administration that basically pops into your classroom whenever they want to and sits back with a red pen and literally marks down everything you say and everything your students say and how you respond, and then meet with you on how you did. That happened quite a bit. So you couldn't feel comfortable with that, knowing that anytime someone is going to pop in and grade you. And just looking back on it, retiring after doing it for 15 years and having my student loans based on income, basically I retired with student loans, still owing $40,000 in student loans. And here I'm retired and still paying them back today. And if I think back, you know, for a couple thousand maybe, and you know, I'm good with my hands and you know, doing things around the house, and I'm good with plumbing issues, electric issues. I just have that kind of mentality to do that kind of stuff. And you know what, I could have for a couple grand, gone and become an apprentice plumber or electrician, gone to school. That would have all been paid back, and actually have something to supplement after I retired by doing, handyman stuff, electrician stuff, plumber stuff. If I had to do it again, I would definitely do something like that. Less stress, less pressure, more money, although it's not all about money. But let's face it, money talks, right? And to think back of not having to pay back student loans, and again, the stress level. Yeah, despite all the wonderful memories of teaching, and I loved the idea, I was a professional. If I had to do it again, no way would I do it. I honestly wouldn't do it. I would have chosen another path. Again, plumber, electrician, I would have been good working on cars. As a kid, I worked on all kinds of cars. I did all kinds of things for the family cars. My brothers, they needed a new starter put in their car, or fuel pump or something like that. I could do it. So I think I would have enjoyed my life probably more as a mechanic, a plumber, electrician, a trade school. If I had the chance to do it all over again, I would have chosen a trade school. We look back now at the mistakes we made, and again, I have wonderful memories as a teacher. Just wonderful memories, wonderful students that I loved very much, and I enjoyed teaching. It's fun teaching someone who wants to learn. But when you got a classroom of 30 kids and, a half a dozen of them don't care anything about learning anything, all they want to do is disrupt the classroom, get attention, have fun, or at the time play with their phones, constant battle, getting the phones out of their hands. It's no fun, because then you become a police officer. And that's the thing they don't talk about. As a teacher, you're an additional parent, you're a police officer, you're a guidance counselor. You have to look at all your kids, how they're doing, how they're dressed, see if you see any signs of emotional problems at home. All these things, unfortunately, so many kids are not brought up in great environments. And as a teacher, you're responsible to find those things out. So I tried my best as a teacher. I with my entertainment background, I tried to bring as much fun as I could into the classroom. I didn't just stand up there and talk. I tried to bring in videos and humor. I tried to keep a smile on my face, if at all possible. And I think my students appreciated that. And I think they have good memories of me. They called me Mr. V, because a lot of them couldn't pronounce my name, Vaughn. I don't know. The spelling of it, I think, is what got to them. Anyway, I thought I'd bring this to you and just discuss my experience as a teacher. And I appreciate you listening, and I hope you gained something from this video. I'd love to know your thoughts, love to know your opinions. What do you think? Have you experienced such a thing? Are you thinking about becoming a teacher? Are you a retired teacher? What did you experience? Love to know. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up. YouTube will push it to more people. And consider subscribing to Mr. Free Time's Retirement Journal. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. I'll talk to you later.